Okay, I will call the Assembly Finance Committee meeting of May 18th to order. Ms. Spiegel, will you please note our roll?
Thank you, Chair Treem. We have all Assembly members present in chambers besides Mayor Weldon and Assembly Member Wafal Gadak, who are absent.
Thank you. Approval of minutes. Any objections to the minutes from the May 11th meeting? Seeing none, those are approved. We'll move on to our first agenda topic, a budget summary update. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Chair Treem. I'm going to do my best to share my screen, both for you and other folks who may be watching, and just update us about where we are. So going forward, that's FY22. So FY23 focused on this section of the budget. Just to recap things, the manager's proposed budget had a $3.4 million deficit. We are now in the process of the Assembly making changes for its adopted budget. A little more than $16 million of prior unreimbursed school bond debt is in here as a revenue source from the state of Alaska. And then also all of the actions that have been taken by the Assembly to date. This reflects both ongoing and one-time items that are funded from the general fund. And still a placeholder here, $2.2 million for potential wage benefit costs. Those are obviously, that's an unknown number. It could be considerably higher or lower, subject to negotiation. So,
Mr. Rogers, Ms. Hale has a question.
Thank you. Words failed me. Is this in our packet or is we just getting this off here?
I'm sorry, Assemblymember Hale, this is page 18. It's a little hard to read through the 17. Is that what's correct? The document starts on 17. I'm looking at page 18. So with the Assembly changes, you would have taken a $3.4 million deficit and roughly doubled it to something about, a little more than $7 million. But after $16 million of unexpected state revenue, the budget still produces a surplus in FY23 of $8.8 million. And then you'll see if you just track this down, what is down here is a $2 million lapse. So, it's not inconceivable that you would say, well, the manager's budget is already effectively reduced by the amount that we're going to lapse. So really $1.5 million deficit from the manager, you get something like a $5 million deficit after your own actions and offset by $16 million of unexpected revenue. So that's where we get. And I'll scroll down here. And I think on the next page of this, we see what fund balance looks like under this circumstance. So quite an unusual period we've gone through with a really big drawdown, intentional drawdown, I should say, of general funds in FY22. And then what is today a fairly sizable surplus because of the $6 million from the state. And then, when you get into FY24, 25, 26, looking at an ongoing structural deficit annually of, $4 to $5 million. And those numbers will change as you make decisions about negotiations and other decisions you make tonight that may imply long-term funding commitments. So that's just an update on that. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this, Mr. Rogers. Would you consider all of these categories in the expenses on page 18, are these all reoccurring costs or are some of these one-time costs?
So Assemblymember Bryson and Chair Treem, some of those are one-time costs and some of them are recurring. And I can actually I or Ms. Spiegel can just point out really quick what we think is one-time and what's ongoing. So MIH is an ongoing expense that continues in future years. The increase in sales tax support to CIPs is an ongoing, no.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Rogers, I didn't want to hash over these different expenses tonight, but I thought maybe in future budget cycles, if, as we're deciding these things or tweaking the budget, if we could have maybe a split the categories between what's reoccurring and what's one time, that might help us when trying to balance the future budgets out. But I definitely don't want you to go over it right now, sir.
No problem. Thank you, Assemblymember Bryson. That's good clarification. So if you go to the top of page 19, importantly, when we start talking about the FY24 budget, when we back out one-time FY23 items, we back out $16 million of revenue and we back out $772,000 of expenditure. So there's $772,000 of expenditure that we've identified as one time. The remainder of that is ongoing. And that's, you just see that's how we create the next year's, that's how we start creating the next year's budget, taking this year's budget and backing out the one-time items.
Thank you. That was a helpful clarification. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Hale and then Ms. Gladysevsky.
Thank you. Do you have, thank you for this, Mr. Rogers. Do you have a sense, has the governor signaled any interest in vetoing that school bond debt reimbursement? Or do we know the position of the governor on that?
So thank you, Assemblymember Hale, Chair Treem. The governor has said almost nothing publicly about what he would consider vetoing and not vetoing. In fact, the media has said as a governor, he's been unusually tight-lipped on that subject. We intuit from our lobbyists that the conference committee action to reduce the dividend to make the size and scale of the overall budget deficit smaller reduces the pressure on the governor to veto things. Does that mean he will or will not veto the school bond debt reimbursement? I don't know. I could speculate just like anybody else. But certainly the big deficit with the big PFD that we thought we might be seeing last week, that hasn't happened. So, and I think under that circumstance, we would have really thought it was much more of a target for a veto. With a more sensible budget, the governor may be less inclined to make vetoes. Obviously, the governor's running for election. You can do your own math on the politics. At the same time, my argument has been, I don't know how much rank and file voters really care about school bond debt reimbursement to municipalities. So I think it remains a veto target, but I think for your purposes, it's reasonable to start thinking that might, I mean, just know that it could come or go, but I think it's worth still thinking that it might wind up in the general fund.
Ms. Gladysevsky.
Just a quick question. Thank you for these numbers. These numbers reflect everything we did to date. So none of if we add any more, that's not on.
Correct.
Thank you.
Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just trying to calculate if we didn't get the 16 million school bond debt reimbursement, that would leave us 6 million in the hole. Is that correct? Approximately?
Yes, Assemblymember Hale, Chair Treem, let me just scroll up here. So if I backed out, actually, I have another version. Let me just stop sharing real quick and I'll share a different version of this because I do intend to work. I do intend to work in this tonight as you make decisions. So this is the live version, live living color version. So if I just come in here and delete that, you went from an $8.8 million surplus to a $7.2 million deficit, offset by a $2 million lapse. So we'd wind up with a deficit a little more than $5 million. Obviously, a lot of water to go under the bridge between now and then, but.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. May I have a follow-up, please? I just want to call attention on page 17 to the two items marked pending, which are the new City Hall, 6.3 million, and the IT infrastructure, 1.5 million. For me, even though I am in favor of a new City Hall, it is not a given that I will vote for the new city hall. And that's still pending, and IT infrastructure, I'm more likely to. But I think that as we're working on both the budget and then again, as we're looking at sales tax, removal of sales tax on food, that was my intent in wanting to table that 6.3 million, is to give us more room to move. And obviously, if the governor does not veto that money, then we have even more room to move. But that gives us wiggle room. It gives us what we used to call in the state a soft landing. So I just wanted to point that out, that those are in your numbers, but those are pending right now. Thank you.
Did I see another hand? I thought I saw one down there. Oh, okay. Mr. Rogers, could we talk about the lapse for a second? Because it's interesting to me that we talk about it as if we're relatively sure that we will have a $2 million lapse, and it doesn't quite make sense to me why we're budgeting it if we know we're not going to spend it.
Thank you, Chair Dream. So we don't budget it per se. It never gets reflected in the budget. Here we take it out. We reflect it as an anticipated variance. I adopted this a little bit from my predecessor, actually. Mr. Bartholomew used a much different structure for talking about it, but I remember even when he introduced the very first budget that I was here to see, he was quick to say, if the assembly adopted a budget with a $2 million deficit, you could basically assume that that was balanced as a result of the lapse. We lapse money every year, and it's unlikely that we wouldn't lapse money. And that's got to do, and that's different from how the state budgets, because we do not budget for personnel vacancy in the same way that the state does. So we are always, to some degree, going to have personnel services vacancy. Now, the one cautionary tale about next year is that we continue to see truly runaway inflation, and that will inflate city costs. So the question will be, does the manager use his authority to move money around within a department to cover those potential overages? Do we come back to you with the transfer of general funds between departments to cover in the regular operation? We hardly ever do this, but I think next year with inflation, what it is, it stands to reason we are gonna spend more than we might think in non-personal services, and that lapse could be smaller. In every year that I have been here, the lapse has been considerably bigger than $2 million. So that is a conservative number.
Well, I know the last couple of years with the lapse have been maybe not normal years. So I won't hold those against you. How did you calculate 2 million?
Chair Dream, I don't calculate 2 million. It's a WAG, a plug, a big round number. It is lower than any lapse we've had recently. But to your point, in the time that I have been CBJ's finance director, we have not had a normal year.
Any other questions on the budget summary update? Okay. We can move on to agenda topic B, which is results from a balancing act. Mr. Rogers.
Okay, let me share the other document here. So we felt some responsibility just to recognize that people did log in, they did balancing act. I didn't want to keep that from anybody, the results of what people submitted. So I hope that the assembly, at some point logged into balancing act and poked around and clicked the numbers up and down and saw what happened with the budget to get balanced and unbalanced. And as we've talked about before, I think the primary purpose of that tool is education, letting the public really see how revenue and expenditure connect in the city budget, I think is important for the public's understanding of the budget. At the same time, balancing act allows anybody to reduce revenue, increase revenue, reduce expenditure, increase expenditure until the budget is in balance or not, and then click submit, and balancing act basically treats all of their changes as a kind of survey response. So what you see on these 2 pages is a digest of those survey type responses. And I don't know that anything would be really surprising about them. people would love to pay less property tax, or would love for the city to collect less property tax. They seem enthusiastic about the city collecting more in non-property taxes. And it's a little hard in this format for us to drill in, but the bulk of those increases we see on the back end as alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, more so than sales tax. And I don't blame anybody for having done those things. It fits in the game of it would be nice if somebody else paid taxes rather than me. So we do see that. Relatively little action for some of these middle areas, and then state and federal support. Interesting that the median and the average get so out of sync for those potential new revenues. What it suggests is that somebody's sticking in a really big number. And that's one of our, Ms. Spiegel and I were just talking, it's kind of a learning process for us about how to make the tool work well. There might need to be limits on what people could stick in there. Obviously, what we see under state and federal support is probably somebody saying, let's just go get $10 million from the state, right? Which if we could, we would. And when we can, we do. But otherwise, I think the standout things are just a fairly strong consensus about a reduction to property tax and some consensus around an increase to consumption taxes. And it's funny that in the time that I've been here, we've not spent a lot of time talking about the alcohol tax or tobacco tax, marijuana tax. And if that's a subject that the committee is interested in, I think we could put that on an agenda and talk about it. We just haven't since I've been here. So any questions about revenue? If not, I'll move on.
Ms. Glaszewski.
Just any,
Oh, 73, I think is
okay, thank you.
correct. So thank you. Okay, this is what happened on expenditures. Interestingly enough, I think that this happens in part because the balancing tool naturally forces or encourages people to make a tax reduction and then also balance it with the reduction in city services, which is the point of the tool and the point of the educational process. So you do see people reducing virtually every department in the city by some amount. Lot of responses focused on reduction to community grants. I don't know exactly what motivates that. It just data, it's just interesting. Otherwise, you see reductions kind of across the board, a lot of reductions to Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec, again, tends to be one of those kinds of things that's like, if I don't use it, it's easy for me to reduce. I think probably naturally fits there. You could look at any of these numbers and make hay of them, I think. Yep, just information.
There were limits, if I recall correctly, on what people could do for like the school district and maybe some others.
Yeah, yes, there are limits built in all over with what you can and cannot do. So for example, on this particular page, you cannot change debt service. For the school district, somebody using the tool could not reduce below the local minimum required, but we did give them complete ability to between the minimum local required and the cap, right?
I believe so. I would have to go back and look at exactly what limitations there are, but when I built this tool, when I sort of formatted it before publishing, I worked to reasonably set ceilings and floors so that somebody couldn't completely defund the police department. That would be $18 million or whatever from the budget. But for other programs, like some recreational programs, something that's been discussed a lot in the past is Augustus Brown Pool. We did allow people to have a little bit more flexibility in, weighing in on that. So this is kind of an experiment for us as well. So I think there are areas where I could have done it better, or reviewing these results. I'm maybe more informed about where to put ceilings and where to put floors and at what levels.
Next
Sure.
year,
I'll just make one quick point about these. You're seeing these numbers in dollars, which is a little different than their percentages. So what looks here like a $300,000 reduction to the police department would actually be quite minor, but what looks like maybe $600,000 reduction to community grants would be really, really substantial. So yeah, I think it's worth remembering that these departments are all quite different in their scale.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. And next year we'll build in some safeguards for the pool. Ms. Gladysevsky.
Thank you. I just wondered what was the definition of community grants, just to try to understand what they were reducing. What did it say that was?
Yeah, so very good question. Those community grants are all of the Assembly's grants. So if you flip to that page in your budget book, you'll see all of your grants. All of those things are included there. And did we have them in categories?
But did it just say, what did it say? What was the text about community
I
grants?
think Assemblymember Gladysevsky, we broke them down the same way that we did in the cards. I don't know if you
Oh,
remember the card
yep.
exercise, but I think we had economic grants, social service grants, arts and culture grants. I
Okay.
think there's 4 categories where you could adjust those grants.
So those are separate.
Correct. Correct.
We're missing some over here. Oh, no.
Okay, it's a great mystery.
I think
Um,
Lacey still. I think somebody cleaned our drawers. Yeah.
So
Well,
what you see on the next page is just, this is a canned report that comes out of a balancing act. Top revenue increase ideas by major category, revenue decrease by major category, expenditure increase. It's the same thing you saw on the last page, just in a slightly different format. And then you see the narrative solutions for everybody who said, I think we should have new revenue. You see it right here. Land sales, city getting into the electric bike rental game, just whatever. People trying to come up with ideas to raise revenue, and then similarly on the spending side, the expenditure side, I don't need to read these to you, but you can see interesting, it's interesting. One of the things that's actually kind of nice about this page is you start to see the diversity of opinions, right? So the consensus opinion was to reduce Assembly grants, but then somebody has proposed that you do 10 million more in new grants.
okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Rogers and Ms. Spiegel. I think this is pretty interesting information, and I hope we keep doing it and keep working on it. So any more questions on this item? Okay, we will jump into our items for action. And that would be with agenda topic C, our decision list. We have a couple of pending items, and these are the ones in white in our packets. So the first one being Juneau Community Foundation Social Services Block Grant. I don't have Madam Mayor to make my motions tonight, so somebody want to jump on in?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Chair. I can't remember what form she made them in, but if I'm just starting on item number 10, I would move that we increase the amount of general fund by $514,600 to the Juneau Community Foundation.
Mr. Smith.
Objection for a question. Mr. Rogers, remind me how much the manager's budget is already increasing Juneau Community Foundation?
Mr. Smith, we have it. One second. If you know it.
It's 10%, isn't it?
It's
You want
Ma-
this?
Through the chair, I can answer that question.
Okay.
Mr. Smith, it's a 10% inflationary increase on $853-ish thousand. So it's about $85,000 plus an additional $150,000. So
It's 235,400. That's the amount of additional funding that's included in the manager's budget. And then The remaining 514,600 is the difference between the community foundation's additional request of 750 and what the manager already has in the budget. Do I need to say that all again?
No,
Okay, so the community foundation has requested an additional $750,000 over last year's award. The manager has already funded 235,400 of that amount. So the amount that is remaining to be funded of JCF's additional requests for 23 is 514,600.
Mr. Smith.
thank you, Madam Chair. That is a significant number. As we see in the column, it is ongoing. I know there are needs out there. I guess I should probably say something first or make a motion. I would amend the motion to increase the amount by $262,300, so half of the additional amount over the manager's request.
Okay, just to clarify, that's half of the amount that Ms. Hughes Scandy has moved.
Yes, thank you.
Could you repeat the number?
Dividing it in my head, 262,300. Can I speak to that really quick?
Please, go ahead.
It's just, I mean, I know there's the need. I know the community foundation would give it to people that are doing good things for the community. I do not doubt that in the least. It's just, we are seeing an ongoing deficit of looks like $3 to $4 million every year. This would add another 500,000. When we've done ongoing things like for childcare, I mean, we found sources to fund it. Again, I fully know that JCF would use that money well. It's just a little, it's just too much for me to try to put into a budget when we already have an ongoing deficit of $3 to $5 million a year in out years. So that's my motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith.
Chair Dream, I'm sorry to interrupt with the motion on the floor. That amount, 514,600 divided by 2 would be 257,300.
Would you like to change your motion, Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you. I should probably use a calculator. My mental one failed. So 257,300. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Bryson.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to object to Mr. Smith's motion. While I do understand that we're going to be facing budget challenges in the future, the community has overwhelmingly asked us to deal with the homeless crisis that we are facing. And I think putting more of the resources into it now, getting ahead of the problem, allowing an opportunity for the United Human Services campus to really work and achieve what they call as functional zero. We're never going to eliminate homelessness, but they have a plan to get to where we can really combat it here in Juneau. And while I do agree that we do need to tighten down on the budget in years to come, I think we would be selling our process short of how much good we've done to achieving like real solutions for homelessness. It would be pulling funds at like right as we're making a difference. If this was a few years down the road and the United Human Services building had been operational for a little while and we were getting whatever results we were getting, I could see going with Mr. Smith's motion. But right now, while we're trying to get our hands wrapped around the homeless crisis, this is not the time to cut the funds, unfortunately. Thank you for allowing me to speak to my objection to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Ms. Hale, then Ms. Wall, and then Ms. Glaszewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also object to the amendment. It's my recollection that this was postponed until this meeting because Madam Mayor questioned the 150,000 for the Glory Hall and wanted to pull that out. And we chose instead to postpone it.
No,
No,
that's not why, you weren't here. That's not why I was.
I was here on the 4th, right? Wasn't this on the
We-
4th?
We did this last week. I
Okay,
can't remember who made the motion to postpone it last week.
I think someone asked something about the community foundation.
I can speak to it if you want to know, but
Ms. Hale, did you want more information on that?
yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Ms. Glaszewski?
that was me. I wasn't here the week you had this at finance and it was just a lot and I begged your forgiveness for not knowing and not, it wasn't to target a specific thing. It was just, I needed more time to review the whole package and people did have questions and you saw the Community Foundation sent us a memo about the questions that people asked during the discussion. So it was not it just wasn't what you just said, Ms. Hale, that's all.
Thank you. Then it was at the meeting before, as I understand, right?
The last meeting.
The 150,000, that the mayor called that into question and
We did have some discussions about that initially.
okay.
When
thank
we
you.
talked about it last week, I don't remember that really coming up as much.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Wall?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll support this amendment. I agree with Mr. Smith that this money is needed. But you know, it's not, we're not cutting JCF's budget here. We are not increasing it as much as was requested. So it's just it's a big jump given some of the financial uncertainty right now about our revenues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Sorry, I wrote down the wrong name. Ms. Glaszewski?
Thank you. We had been giving, this was the social services block grant that the city used to give out and it had a whole committee and it was convoluted. And then the Community Foundation started to give out grants and it made sense to give it to the Community Foundation. So it is a thing that the city had been doing for many years. The Community Foundation just administers it. And that had stayed at about 250,000 for many years, or sorry, 850,000 for many years. And I totally agree that that should be increased because it's been 850 forever, for many years. So, but asking for 750 over 850 is a really big jump. So I would support this amendment as well. And I totally agree. It's necessary money, but so I just wanted to say that it was 850 and now it would be whatever, 500,000 more than the 800,000 as opposed to 750 more than 800,000. Thank
God, we
you.
are so bad at math. Thank you, Ms. Glaszewski. Oh, yeah. Ms. Hughes Candies?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will try to keep my thoughts in separate bubbles so I don't get confused. I appreciate the fiscal restraint of my colleagues. If the mayor were here, she would be happy with your rationale. And I appreciate your rationale as well, because I agree without finding new sources, we shouldn't just continue to lump on to the ongoing costs that we're putting in the budget. I wanted to, it's interesting that we looked at the results of the survey because as we're talking about like community grants as compared to like a large department, it's a lot of money. And yet when you look at how much money as a city we spend on community grants, that's actually a small part of what we do. We spend a lot of money doing a lot of other things. I know that it's easy. It can be easy then to say, well, I didn't vote for, I wouldn't have added this money and I wouldn't have added this money, but now I want to add money because this is money I believe in. And to a certain extent, that is what I'm saying here, because I am with you in spirit that I don't think we should just continue to add ongoing costs. And yet, what I don't think we should make cuts on, or I don't think that the only place we exercise fiscal restraint should be in funding to services who are, to take a page out of Mr. Bryson's comments,
that's something consistently we hear about that people want more of. And in fact, it's not even so much that inflation is affecting those social services. We don't even have enough social service providers in town to deal with the social service problems we have in town. So that's my pitch to you all for why I think it is a large amount of money, and I recognize that, but why I would support giving them their full request. And then separate thought to Mr. Smith as a request, and I procedurally don't know if this would mess things up, but I do appreciate that you guys are also trying to get there, if not this whole amount, maybe a smaller amount. If Mr. Smith, I can't count notices, wanted to remove his amendment, if this vote fails, and then you can make that as a separate amendment, because I would vote for your amendment, obviously, if the larger amount failed. And that's it.
Okay, I think,
But that's up to you, obviously.
I guess I will withdraw that amendment because there are not the votes for it to pass. And then I'll leave it for everyone else to try to work with.
thank you. Okay, Mr. Smith. Ms. Glaszewski.
So we're back to the main motion then, which I will speak against it. I will vote for a lesser amount if this one fails.
Okay, Ms. Spiegel, will you please call our roll?
Thank you, Chair Treem. On
Ms. Hale.
I just have a question. So if you vote on this and it fails, does that mean they don't get any of the 514,600?
No, we are, this motion is for the general fund request that's over what's already in the manager's budget. So the manager's budget has $1,089,300, which is a 10% increase from last year, plus an additional $150,000 over last year. So the motion is just for this extra piece of 500,000. So if this motion fails and any other motion were to fail, they would still be receiving $1.1 million.
I don't understand it, but
Do you want to take a
Yeah.
recess? Let's take a quick recess. Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Ms. Hughes Gandy's, which is for $514,600. We have objection. Ms. Spiegel, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Treem. Assemblymember Hughes Gandy's,
Yes.
Assemblymember Hale,
yes.
Assemblymember Bryson,
Yes.
Assemblymember Wall.
No.
Assemblymember Gladysevsky,
No,
Assemblymember Smith,
No,
Chair Treem.
No.
Motion fails, 3 ayes, 4 nays.
Okay, I will entertain another motion. Ms. Gladysevsky.
can I have a moment to use my calculator?
Yes, we'll take another at ease.
I'm ready.
And we're back.
I would move that we add to the manager's budget for the community foundation, 264,600. And I'd speak to that, that would increase their grant by $500,000 total. And that seems prudent at this time to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gladysevsky. Any objection to this motion? Ms. Wall?
Sorry, I'm confused. Did you not just make the same motion that Mr. Smith made? What am I missing?
I didn't make the exact motion. His motion was for 300,000, which would total 700,000 extra to them. I just made it 500,000 extra to them compared to their last year's grant. So the manager gave them 400. And if this motion passes, it would give them another 600, which would total 500,000 more instead of their 750,000 that they asked for. Got it? Thank you.
Ms. Hale?
Thank you. May I ask the maker of the motion a question? This 500,000, does this include the 150,000 for the Glory Hall? Or is that included in the manager's budget? Is that included
That
in your
was-
500,000 or is that included in the manager's budget?
I don't know the answer to that. This is just
Chair-
the
Chair
big
Freeman,
community block grant.
The additional 150,000 was already included in the manager's request.
But,
Assemblymember Gladysevsky's $500,000 request would be on top of that.
okay, but none of our, historically speaking, or this year, when we give money to JCF to do the social services block grant, we are not telling them how to divvy up that money. So we have added an amount. This is similar to the school district last week. We are giving an amount of money. We are not necessarily instructing them, although I think there is the sense that this extra $150,000 is for the Glory Hall. But that's not part of our normal process to assign. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there any objection to Ms. Gladysevsky's motion? Seeing none, that is adopted. So that was item 10 on the decision list. And the final two are the AEYC grants, one for parents as teachers and one for operations. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move item 12, a one-time FY23 appropriation for $141,000 to AEYC for parents as teachers with conditional language. The reason for the language is that I've heard that there is potential grant funding for that money. The condition would be, I'll just pull it up and not tie it to something we've done in the past. Essentially that the grant is conditioned on the grantee agreeing to refund to CBJ these grant funds dollar for dollar, essentially if they within the next fiscal year receive grants to make up or to fund any amount of that program. And we can work on final language, but essentially it's if they receive grant funding, what they are trying to do and may have a chance to get, if they receive that grant, they will refund back that money back to the city, back to CBJ for FY23 grants received.
Thank you. Mr.
And
Smith.
thank you. And just to note, I did just make that for FY23. I think we should have another conversation on it. FY24, things may happen in the state budget or anyway, I'm just saying do it for FY23.
Okay, so
Thank you.
one time.
One time. Yep.
Okay. Are you clear on that, Ms. Beagle and Mr. Rogers? Okay. Any objection to Mr. Smith's motion? Okay, I see none. That motion is adopted. Do you want to make a motion, Mr. Smith? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Treem. I would move decision list item number 13, AYC grant for operations for 102,000. Just again as an FY23 increment and asked for unanimous consent.
Any objection to that motion? I see none. That motion is adopted.
Chair Treem, just to be perfectly clear, that is similarly conditioned or not?
No.
From my understanding, there's that,
Okay, so that's unconditioned, but still one time,
yes,
Yes.
one time.
yes.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. That takes us through the decision list. We are done with that. Congratulations.
Chair Treem,
Mr. Rogers.
I might just, if we could agree to take a 5-minute break, I would get this all put into the summary. We can look at it again with the decisions we just made.
Okay, that sounds like a great idea. We will do that.
Chair Treem, so we just tabulated a few things here, and I'll share my screen so you can see, and everybody else can too, in theory. Let's not start there. Let's start back with the decision list. So we got things coded correctly into the decision list. We did this last week just to give you a total of where you're at. So there was a little more than $2.5 million of requests. You have granted 1.7 million of those requests, although some of them were granted as one time, some ongoing, some from the Affordable Housing Fund, some from hotel bed tax. I could see it just fine on my screen. Can you see this better? Thank you. Okay. So 1.7 million is the total of actions that the Assembly has taken just off of the decision list. 75 from hotel bed tax, 108 from the Affordable Housing Fund, 930,700 of one-time costs, and 615,700 of ongoing general fund costs. And we have a mill rate equivalent for both of those things, just as a way to remind that cells that we have to pay for things. One note I would make about one-time costs is that in my experience on the Assembly, which is not as long as some of yours, one-time costs become long-term costs. So I wouldn't discount those completely moving into 24, 25, 26. It just means that next year you will make that decision rather than the manager. Okay, so we got those things into the budget summary. So here we come back and we see those new things now, AEYC, and increase to the JCF block grant. So now the total Assembly adopted changes about 4.3 million. Again, a lot of uncertainty still because that includes a wage and benefit cost that's not known, but that increases the FY23, well, however you want to think about it. If I had this number and this number, the deficit before the 16 million from the state would be $7.7 million, and then after it's 8.2. So you've only added a little bit of additional cost tonight. Again, this particular document doesn't distinguish between one-time and ongoing costs, except for in the FY24 budget creation, we did correct this so that the manager's budget next year will remove a little more than $1 million of one-time costs that you identified as one-time tonight. And then if I was a betting man, I would guess that you add most of them back again, or a future Assembly does. So just know that that is out there. And then I do have a document that I updated the document about the mill rate, but I think let's get to that when we get to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry for being dense here. What I didn't follow in that, and maybe your first budget summary as well, the funding for MIH was from the tobacco tax. Is that, how is that? I assume that's reflected somewhere, but.
It is, but it's thank you for asking, because it's worth pointing out. So what happens in FY23 is that we add that cost, and then we don't back it out as a one-time item, but in 24 we reflect that we expect an additional 540,700 of tobacco tax newly as revenue in the FY24 budget.
Are you good on that? Okay. Any other questions on that? Okay. We will move on to item D, capital improvement plan for action. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Finance Committee forward Resolution 2975 as amended by the Finance Committee version 2 to the full Assembly for adoption. And I ask unanimous consent.
Any objection? I see none, so that is done. Thank you. Now on to agenda topic E, the mill rate. Mr. Rogers.
Okay, thank you, Chair Treem. So I'm going to bring up one more document here. Again, this is not trying to encourage the assembly to do any one thing or another. It's to try and give you as much context as possible for the decision you have in front of you. This may be a little hard to see on that screen up there. I wish we had a slightly different format, but this document is also on page 35, the very last page of the packet. We just updated a little bit for tonight. So as we see it, there is a proposal from the manager that would set the mill rate at 10.66, increasing property taxes over the prior year by 4.1 million. And then we give you three options. And of course, you can set any mill rates you want that are legal under the law, but we give you three options, at least as a starting point. One would be to accept that proposal. Two would be to keep the mill rate flat from the prior year, which is to leave to leave the area-wide rate at 6.6. That would lose you $575,740. Or we've given you another option, which is to accept the manager's proposal and also increase the property tax mill rate sufficient to pay for the things that you have added to the budget as ongoing costs, not one time, just the ongoing items. That amount was back to the other document, 0.11. Well, you can't actually see it there, but it's what I just showed you, $615,000, 1.1 mills. I'm sorry, 0.11 mills. I apologize. So that would make the area-wide rate 6.81. It would increase property tax collections over the manager's proposed by $633,000. A little bit of rounding there, but this is not meant to encourage you to do any one thing or another. It's just to give you context and options, hopefully in a way that's helpful.
Mr. Rogers, option number 3, which maybe you could make bigger, 10.77. That's different than what is in our packet because of the actions we just took. Is that why?
That's correct. So, right. So if you're looking at the version in your book, okay, if you look at option number 3, accept proposal and fund decision list ongoing costs, instead of 6.76, based on the decisions you made tonight, that would need to be 6.81, which gets you to a total mill rate of 10.77.
Any questions on what Mr. Rogers has shown us? Mr. Smith.
Are you ready for a motion?
I think we're ready for a motion.
Thank you, Chair Treem. I propose, or I move that we set the mill rate for FY23 at 10.56 mils, essentially flat from the prior year. I speak to my motion.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have seen tonight, obviously, that I believe, have a recurring deficit in the budget. Thankfully, we have significant savings, potentially a significant grant or whatever you call it from the state, and some pending items that can help with savings. I'm proposing a flat mill rate from the prior year to essentially have some sensitivity to the cost increases that our property taxpayers are seeing, as well as in a way that I think is a decent way for the assembly to put some downward pressure on the budget. For the last couple of years, they've been very wild with revenues coming in and state grants and all these things. By putting slight downward pressure on the budget, I see that this would reduce our property tax by almost $600,000, our property tax revenue by $600,000. It hopefully will make the manager and the assembly have to take a look at our finances as things are kind of getting back to normal and how we address that structural deficit. It's the manager's job to implement our budget. The departments and the manager know the budgets and where things can be cut or what we need to do, and they can propose those decisions, and that's their job to do. And then it's our job to decide how to do or to go along with it or not. That's my reason for the motion, Madam Chair, to put a little downward pressure on the budget and give a little bit of relief to our property taxpayers. Thank you.
Mr. Bryson and then Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Smith. I greatly appreciate this motion and I fully support it. I have great faith in Juneau, and with inflation, one of the side effects is we're going to see an increase in value in our properties at a faster rate than what we're used to. And I think taking the mill rate down 0.1 is a very fiscally responsible way to respond to escalating home prices. And I think we're right on point here. So I fully support this. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Smith.
Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if it's constructive to, I'm trying to decide how much time to allocate to saying why I think this is a bad idea rather than suggesting an alternate option. I think we just talked, the last finance meeting, we talked a lot about how we weren't exercising restraint, and the mayor was a cheerleader for making sure we didn't just add ongoing costs to the budget. Mr. Rogers has given us a couple of presentations now, or we've had packet items demonstrating that he believes there's a structural deficit. We just got the updated version with everything we added tonight as well. And so it seems crazy to me that rather than even taking the middle road of accepting the manager's proposal, that we would try to decrease our revenues at the same time that we're increasing our costs. This is something that people who played with our budget tool couldn't do, because we're trying to educate them that you have to go one way or another. So to me, this would be very irresponsible. Although I very much appreciate that right now we're all experiencing financial effects of inflation, and I appreciate your desire to help out our residents. I think this is gonna, I will say out of, so I would speak strongly against this. I'll try to wrap this up. I would speak strongly against this, and I don't know if I should let other people speak before I would make a case for a different option, so.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to Mr. Smith for making this proposal. I probably don't have the votes, but I appreciate the proposal. I felt like last year we clawed back 0.1 mils, and I was really disappointed to see it added back to the manager's budget. I am hoping, and I don't know how we can do this, but I'm hoping, Madam Chair, that you and Mr. Rogers can actually, once we're through the budget cycle, that the Assembly as Finance Committee can have an actual discussion about the structural surplus that we've seen over many years. We've rarely seen deficits in the time that most of us have been on this Assembly, but instead have seen a structural surplus. And over again, we say, we can only use that for one-time expenditures. We can't use that for ongoing revenues. I spoke earlier when I was talking about the 6.5 million for City Hall, perhaps not supporting that, although I do support a City Hall. I spoke earlier about budgeting within the state, where we would talk about a soft landing. So one of the other things that we have not spoken at any really dug into is the appropriate way to manage a fund balance. And is the appropriate way to manage a fund balance just to spend it on one-time expenditures? Or is it to see, that let that fund balance absorb some of the shock if we actually do end up with a deficit, rather than always being cautious and then ending up with surpluses? We haven't had that discussion. I would really think that we as an assembly could benefit from that discussion. So we actually look at different ways of approaching this subject. All that said, I support Mr. Smith's motion. I think that we have the fund balance to support this. And we also have a rapidly changing financial and economic picture. And we do owe it to our citizens to try to provide a tiny bit of tax relief because they also have that rapidly changing picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I should know the answer to this, but just to be sure, and let me be clear, I do not hope this happens, but if Mr. Palmer is on the line, is he? If we take action tonight on a mill rate and change it at our next regular assembly meeting, is that allowed?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
We don't
Thank-
need
I'm
to-
glad everyone else knows the answer to this. I guess I still don't know what happened at that committee of the whole meeting. So I'll figure that out on my own. Thank you.
Let's forget the committee of the whole meeting ever happened. But the answer to your question is yes. Mr. Rogers, can you, it would be helpful for me in thinking of our proposed mill rates since we are talking about them basically in terms of tenths. Could you tell me for a homeowner whose home is valued at something like at $400,000, what is 1/10 over a year? And while you, if you need to calculate that, you probably don't,
No, I
because
don't.
you're smarter than we are. I did just want to address something Mr. Bryson said about inflation. Our assessed value is already set for the year and that won't change. But it is probably true that that will change next year. So, Mr. Rogers.
So Chair Dream, 1/10 of 1 mil is $100 for every $100,000 of value.
Okay.
So a $500,000 home, 1/10 of 1 mil is $500.
Okay, so we're talking about $60 a month for a homeowner whose home is
No,
valued at.
Chair Dream, I just completely did the math in my own head. It is a tenth of that. I just told you 1 mil. So let me say it, let me just wipe all that from your mind. And I'll take two, finance director, take two.
Okay,
1 mil, 1.0 mil is $100 for every $100,000 of value. 1/10 of 1 mil is $10 for every $100,000 of value. So for somebody who owns a $500,000 home, 1/10 of 1 mil is a difference of $50 per year.
per year.
For
Okay,
somebody who owns a $100,000 condo, it's $10 per year.
thank you, Mr. Rogers. So with that, I'll say I will add my objection to Mr. Smith's motion. I don't think this is the place where we address the high cost of living in Juneau, which I believe is something we need to do, but given that this saves somebody, you know, less than $10 a month, I don't think this is where people are going to see that savings. So we have an objection, or did more of you want to discuss? I don't want to rush you.
Just add one more comment.
Oh, yeah, of course. Mrs. Skiddies.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I won't make you, I don't want to subject you all to rambling about, you know, the different reasons I think this is a bad idea. But given that dollar amount, I think I want to re-impress upon myself that, you know, out of Mr. Smith said something about what it's our job to do and what it's a manager's job to do. The manager creates his budget. You know, he takes when we have our retreats and we say all the things we want to do and we're asked to make maybe less goals and we add to the goals, he takes his cue from us. And so I think I could pick on a city, you know, I could choose any city department and say, we need to make cuts to that department, but we will need to do less if we're really, and I'm not saying that couldn't be what this assembly is talking about, but I think we should really think about, are we saying as an assembly that we're going to cut the city budget because we're going to cut services because that's what the community wants? They want less city services and that's going to be less dollar amounts. That's one way to do it. But if that's not like our end goal that we're going towards, I just think we're talking in tenths of mils, not my very unpopular idea of adding a mill to pay for the sales tax off of food. I mean, I think when we look at the actual dollar amount, again, if we're being honest and we're being responsible about the services we're trying to provide to the residents, we would be better off going for option number 3 and paying for what we just did. And I'll stop talking.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm gonna support this motion. It's a tough choice, and I would say that I think I agree with Ms. Hughes Candies more than I do with Mr. Smith about the why. I don't think that, I think we should be, if we want to be cutting, we should be cutting instead of putting downward pressure on the mill rate. But I really agree with Ms. Hale, and which is why I'll support this. Is I know that looking at this, it looks like we have a structural deficit, but yet every year we've taken in larger and larger fund balance. Until I see that not happen, I'm prepared to keep this flat and consistent for our residents.
Mr. Smith, you gotta be more vigorous
Flippy,
with your hand waving.
I was biding my time, Madam Chair. Thank you. Just a couple of things. I appreciate the comments. I know many in our community, I think we do a good job of delivering services. I do also think it's good to have the conversation and be thinking about what can we do better? What can we do more efficiently? A little scarcity breeds some innovation. And, maybe there's not the great fixes to do it. Anyway, again, I think if we're always there to hand it out, I guess just a little downward pressure, I think, is maybe not a bad thing. I think our staff and our manager do a very good job on the budget. Anyway, I just think, just from a philosophical standpoint, a little downward pressure, I think, can maybe not lead to bad things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Sorry, everybody's gonna have to wave louder. Mr. Watt.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to weigh in on what you should do with the mill rate, but lowering the mill rate doesn't put any downward pressure on the budget. Appropriating less money puts downward pressure on the budget, or deciding to do less creates that. So lowering the mill rate, I think in this case, and I'm hearing you and the reasons that you may want to do that, but it functionally lowers fund balance. So it maybe puts pressure next year, but it certainly doesn't do it this year.
Ms. Gladszewski.
This is a tough one. I agree with the manager. This doesn't do anything for putting pressure. We need to stop adding things to the budget if we want to lower costs. And I also am persuaded by the people have gotten increased costs. We do continue to do, as Ms. Hale said, we continue to have more, and we're conservative, and I really appreciate that. But this year, I think I would support this, and next year, the next assembly is going to have to face this again.
Thank you, Ms. Gladszewski. Okay, we have a motion and objection. Ms. Beagle.
Thank you, Chair Tareem. Assemblymember Smith,
Yes.
Assemblymember Gladaszewski,
Yes.
Assemblymember Wall,
Yes.
Assemblymember Hughes Candies,
No.
Assemblymember Bryson,
Yes.
Assemblymember Hale,
Yes.
Chair Tareem.
No.
Motion passes 5 ayes, 2 nays.
So that was fast. Good job, guys. That leads us to our final item, which is the budget ordinance. Mr. Rogers, does this just need to be moved?
Chair Treem, I think probably to follow what we've historically done, somebody should move the mill rate ordinance out of committee.
Oh, yes, please. Okay, Mr. Smith,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the mill rate ordinance to the full assembly
as we've just amended it.
as amended and ask for unanimous consent.
I see no objection. That motion passes. And then the budget ordinance just needs to be moved as well. Okay. Looking for somebody who wants to move the budget. Mr. Smith,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the budget ordinance as amended from the Finance Committee to the full assembly and ask for unanimous consent.
okay, see no objection. That motion passes. Mr. Rogers, is there anything else we need to do?
Nothing more needs to come before the committee on the budget process. So if I just might editorialize, thank you. This is a hard process. Takes a long time. You make a lot of hard decisions. We have the benefit of getting over to sit here and not have to make those decisions and not have to live with them. So thank you for that. We recognize how difficult it is. Yeah, good thanks. I think this was a good process this year. We'll do everything we can to make next year's process a little tiny bit better, and that's where we'll be.
Mr. Smith?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just want to thank staff and for the quality of information, the clarity, keeping us on track, having the links to, I mean, it's a complicated process, but you made it much, much better. And thank you, Madam Chair, for keeping us on track, having a good schedule, keeping us moving. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Price.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too wanted to extend my thanks to both staff, but also to you, Madam Chair, and to the group. I thought for as difficult as a budget session as this could have been, I thought we handled it quite smoothly. And this felt a lot less stressed than other previous budget cycles. That might have just been me. So I wanted to thank all of you guys. This seemed to be real smooth. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. One thing I just remembered. So our next meeting will be a regular meeting on the 1st. I was thinking we'd move back to 6 o'clock for meeting time. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay, sounds good. Okay. We're adjourned.